camera on so you guys see the side view, but mainly if you guys want to go ahead and pin the video where I'm talking through, I'm going to pin it so I could see a little bit easier for myself. I guess I'll pin it for everybody. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to do is I'm going to get a new sheet of paper. We're going to measure together to get all of our swatches. I do see everyone still, so if you have any questions, you can stop me by unmuting your mic or by just typing in the chat. I'll see all of it. Okay. I have my ruler here. Okay. All right, so first of all, we have our mixed media paper, just to show you guys, this is our paper we're using, right? And we know that this is 14 inches by 11 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a 6 scale swatch, just so then we have the larger scale, but you guys can also do the 5, of course, if you're doing the 5 scale. So just a reminder, again, the giraffe is only 5 and the still life is 6 swatches. So everyone measures differently. I'm going to go ahead and measure a certain way that I found is easy. But first of all, what you want to do is check the perforation. So as you guys know that you can rip off your paper and not have these little spirals. And so there's a perforation that is kind of close to that. Mine is difficult to see, but you want to measure starting at the perforation, because when you do remove this, if you ever choose to, from the tablet, then you don't have to measure from the very base. So everything's still going to be even. Does that make sense so far? So we're finding the perforation. I actually have to draw it out, or I could bend my paper a little bit to find it. Some perforations on sketchbooks are a lot easier to find. This one is not for me. Okay. Okay, so I just bended it so there's a crease now and I can see where that starts and ends. One second, you guys. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my value scale up a little bit high. Remember, this is a 2-part assignment, so you're submitting the value scale and also the painting. When you measure, my measuring device has the 1-inch start after the edge of the ruler. Each person's might be different, so just watch out where your 1-inch begins. I know we went over this before, but I just want to communicate that again. So I'm going to start the straight line next to the perforation, and I'm just going to make 2 to the 2 inches. I'm going to make a straight little dot, kind of a straight line in 2 areas. So I'm just going to write 2 inches in case if we need a visual. So I measured from the perforation 2 inches on 2 sides. That's going to help guide my ruler. Can you guys see this okay? Is the camera okay, everything? Okay. Okay, next what I'm going to do is we're actually doing, I'm going to write this down, 2 by 3 inch swatches. And this is in Canvas of the requirement for them. So I'm going to have 2 inches by 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and count 3 inches from here. So this is going to be the start of my swatch line. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. It's going to end at the 5. So this will be my swatches, 3 inches in length. Let me show you guys. So it's going to look like this. It starts 2 inches inward, 3-inch swatches, and then at the very end, we're going to divide it all into 2s. Any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to the other side where I made my lines. Had the 2-inch, I'm going to put a straight line by the 5. I make straight lines because if I do dots or different lines, it's going to be difficult to guide my ruler of where to go. Okay, so you're welcome to go ahead and close this off now, meaning that you make the straight lines all around. I know there's shadow on here too. It's from the lamp, the ceiling fan, but I know you guys can still see it. Questions? Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and make these lines. They're not going to be this long, but this is going to be a quick, easy way to create our value scale. Okay, so 2 inches. This is at the 2-inch from the ruler. This is at the 5-inch on the ruler. I'm doing okay. Am I going too fast, too slow? Okay, all right. Thank you for those thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, now that I have my width, I want to also get the length. So the length, again, you might have 5 swatches or you may have 6. Since they're 2 inches each, if you have 5 swatches times 2, that's going to be 10 inches because it's 2 times 5, which would be 10. If you have 6 swatches times 2, that's going to be 12 then. Okay, so I'm going to move my ruler. So this is where I do some math. I'm going again to put my ruler now in the width. I know that it goes up to 14 because remember 11 by 14 is our paper. If I want to do 10 or 12, depending on if I have the 5 or the 6 swatches, remember the 6 swatches is a still life. I'll just put SL, and the 5 swatches are the giraffe. I'll just put G for giraffe. I want to make this even. It just kind of creates a nice presentation. So what I do is I'm just going to subtract 1 inch off of both sides. Because if I do 14 subtract 12, that's going to be then 2 left over. So 1 inch by 1 inch on each side of that. And this is for 6 swatches. Questions? We're okay. If I'm doing 5 swatches, it's super easy. All I need to do is bring a 1/2 inch in. So this will be an inch, 0.5, inch and a half. And opposite will be an inch and a half as well. So technically 14 subtract 10. Again, if I'm doing the giraffe, there'll be 4 inches left. So I have 1 inch on each edge. That's 1, 2, then a 1/2 inch. Oh, that's only 3. Okay, let me go more. One moment, you guys. Let me get my eraser here. Okay, just was double checking myself. Okay, then I would go in 2. So please disregard that 1.5 for the giraffe. If you want to double check what you're doing, I just move my ruler over. So say I'm just doing the actual giraffe one, and then I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my 5 swatches. If I'm doing the still life, I'm going to end at 12, and then I would count every 2 into that. So it'd be 6 of them. that makes sense? Was that confusing? Sorry about that, you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna write on the side, giraffe is going to be 2-inch border or 2-inch on the edges. If you're doing the still life, it's going to be only 1 inch for the border. Okay, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to just replicate the same thing I did on the top. And I'm doing 6 swatches for the demo. So I'm doing 1 inch on each side. Once I go into this area here, so I'm just going to move my ruler over, and then I'm literally going to make a line over every 2 inches. So it'd be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Do the same thing above. These are going to be my guiding lines to help me get the proper swatches. I'm erasing that extra line. Okay, are we okay so far? Any questions? Okay, now I'm going to close this off. So I'm going to get my ruler and just make straight lines for each of the 2 inches. For aesthetic reasons, I can erase these if they bother me. The very edge lines that we made as a guiding line. And then what I'm going to do is actually label these by numbering. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That will just help me to know, oh, that's a 3 value. So when I go reference my drawing, I can, or my painting, I can know that would be like a certain value number. Okay, any questions? Are we okay? Thumbs up if we're good with the value scale measurements. Okay, and the ones I don't see, Saxton, are you okay? Abby, how are you? Saul, how are you doing? Thank you, Saxton. Aubrey, how are you? Thank you, Saul. Maddie, are you doing okay? Raylan, thank you guys. Thank you. Scarlett. If for some reason your paper's slightly short, if it's not the 14, then that's fine if it's not a full 1 inch. Kathleen, are you okay? Okay. All right. Okay, so now that we have this, before we start painting, I just did a little simple outline of the still life. Bring it up closer. And what you can literally do is put numbers on. And it doesn't matter if number 1's going to be white or number 1's going to be black. Either way, doesn't matter. Just know your sequence. So say my brightest area, I know this is a highlight. I would say that's 1. And then wherever else there's 1, 2, 3. It's like paint by numbers, kind of like that idea. That can help to the mind to figure out where goes what. Also, you guys, I did a little drawing of this and it was on thin paper. So I actually traced it again to make it a little bit more smoother. Did we talk about using the window as a light box? Okay, maybe for a different class we did. So what you can do, and I'll try to move my main laptop to do this, but you can just use tape, a window, and your original papers. So where'd that go? Okay. So here's my original work that I was working on. I'm going to pull up this window here. And I'll move my camera to show you guys. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape my original artwork on the window. Tape the clean sheet of paper over that. Let me turn on my, trying to do the best I can in this small little space. Okay, let's see. Can you guys see the window and how I put the two papers over each other? So then what would happen is I would press my hand normally against this and use a pencil to just trace. It works as a light box, and you can buy light boxes at Hobby Lobby, Michael's, but they're pretty expensive, and it's just like an 8x10. But that brings light into the background and allows me to see the outline. So I could retrace if I made a mistake or my paper ripped. I have a clean sheet of paper now that I can use for my drawing or painting. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, you guys ready to paint? Let's do our value scale, okay? All right, move over here. Okay, so we're gonna get black and white. I'm not going to get a lot, so I'm just gonna use some paint. And also with your painting set, whatever set you got, I would recommend using a flat brush, not the round ones. The round ones are good for when you actually render, or not render, but paint the detail of the actual painting, because this will get into good pointy areas. Flat brushes are great because that will allow us to work from a flat side. So meaning this is all rectangular, so we can get to the edges very easily. We want to stay away from water, just like we talked about before. When we did that last demo, when you do water down a lot of this, then it does become like a softer, kind of almost like a brown black. And it changes the whole idea of the spectrum of color, of not color, but of the value scale. I'm going to grab my water cup. I just have a simple cup. And also it's good to have some tissue next to you, a paper towel, an old rag, because that's going to clean your brush. To mix paint, you can actually use like a palette knife. This was not required for us to buy. You can use the back side of a brush if you want to. You could tell this one definitely was used for that. You can use this front side of your brush as well. Just sometimes, not sometimes, but every time the paint will all get chunky and accumulate on the actual brush. So it takes some of the paint away and it can be a little bit more messy, but whichever way works for you. Okay, first what I'm going to do is just do the black. So I'm going to start from dark to light. When I actually do the painting, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go from dark to light too. So I'm going to just grab a little bit of black and then I dab it onto the palette just because I don't want a big like chunk of it. And then I'm going to try to paint in a clean direction. If I scrub it at the very edges, that makes it straight. You can also tape this off if you want to. You could have done that. So then you are going to have straight edges regardless. Sometimes the tape does bleed under though, and there is a chance that the paint could go underneath that. So I'm doing like a cross hatching method where I'm going horizontal, then vertical. Because the black is so opaque, meaning that it's not translucent, that you can't really see all the time the directions that your lines are going. So it's very clean and smooth. And if you haven't already, if you are able to paint, I would go ahead and start with your black. What I do is I actually turn my paper to help me get the different sides. If it's difficult to paint in the line, then I would definitely try out working with tape. We're going to tape the other ones. Acrylic paint will dry within depending how thick it is, like you can't really tell, but I do have some thickness on here. I try to make it pretty flat. It can dry maybe like 10 minutes or less, depending how hot or how dry it is in our climate. I'm going to bring tape into this. Okay, so again, you could actually tape off the edges. This is artist tape, or you could even do painter's tape. We talked about that before. Then after I paint this side, I would just keep moving the tape over. How are we doing, you guys? Okay. Okay, black and white will be the easiest to paint because now comes the mixture. I recommend to do this all in one setting. So say if we finish the demo and you're still working, I recommend just sit and keep working because it's difficult, like I mentioned, to get the same grays again, and acrylic dries darker. Am I going too slow, you guys, or too fast? Okay. Awesome. I love seeing you guys paint. It makes me miss being in class with everybody, seeing everyone paint on the tables. And again, I know some of you aren't painting, but I'm glad you're here. You can see what's going on. So then you're able to paint after our session. Okay. All right, I'm going to go on and I'm going to start adding the grays. Now, if you notice, we only have 6 or 5 swatches, so there's going to be quite a bit of a jump to get to our next gray. Here is an older example. So we want to see some sort of jump happen. This, I feel I could do another value in here, but this is what I did for these values. Sometimes too, something might look too dark or light. You're welcome to go over it and just add to it again if it needs to be adjusted. Okay, so we're going to start getting now the next gray tone. So here's my black and white paint. With my brush, because we're working all together at one time, you don't really have to clean it because it's still going to be wet. If you do want to clean your brush, because I'm going to use the same brush for the entire value scale, what I like to do, and I think I already talked about this, I'll twist it. So I just move it around and then I push it against the edges. I'm trying to protect the bristles. Then I will clean it with the paper towel. And I try to pull it. I pull it away from the bristles. And we want to work again dry on dry. So that's why I'm trying to make it a little bit more dry so it's not wet. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to grab a little bit of black, or you could grab a little bit of white. Doesn't matter what you do first. But I'm making now a new palette of color, of value. You don't need much because it will go pretty far. Again, I recommend to use a large area for a palette, like a plate, because then you can just have a whole bunch of value scales all over the place. If you're working with a really small palette, sometimes it's hard to mix them and hard to see all the different values. So now I'm going to look visually, and I know the camera doesn't pick up what you and I will see at our spaces, but I want to make sure that it jumps. So I have black and then I have a gray. If I feel like my gray is too light or too dark, I can just go and add a little bit more of whatever black or white I need. And then start painting. So this looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and start. Sometimes if you put it as you start painting and you put it against the black or whatever value you have next to it and you feel it's too light, you can just go back and mix again and just paint right over it. It's really easy to do. I do like having tape because I can work so much faster and I don't have to care about working so tight in the lines. I just want to make sure it doesn't bleed over. Okay, so I'm doing horizontal, vertical lines, diagonal. Then I'm going to go ahead and leave this there for a few minutes. So now I have my next color, value. I'm going to pull this off, which is really cool. Looks really smooth. Put the same tape over the next line. I don't want to put tape on here because this is still drying. You might even notice your black is dry now if you like pat it. I'm going to go with the next color, value. So I already have this gray. I'm just going to actually add more white to the same existing gray. You could start a new palette area if you want to. I think mixing paint is super relaxing. It's really fun. What I could do is I can put my brush right next to this to see if it looks different. Also, because I'm using a white palette, I recommend using a white paper plate or whatever plate or anything that's white, because it's going to be directly the same color or the same shade that will be on the paper. So say, for example, if I was working with a bright red plate, it will be difficult for me to see these colors because it's not the same relationship on the white paper, if that makes sense. So sometimes we might mix darker or lighter depending on our palette. And add a little bit more white. And I told you guys too, when you do mix with the brush, it does kind of get all glop, like all accumulated on the bristles. So I'm trying to pull it off to kind of conserve that paint. And now I'm going to put it against the other one. And I'm going to paint it going back and forth like a vertical motion to just make sure I have it straight. Then I have the freedom to just go wherever. This is a time too, if I think I'm too dark or too light, I can just add more paint to my palette and fix it. It's really easy to fix paint when it's still wet because it just all blends together. You also don't want to make sure it's streaky. So say if I didn't mix this fully and I had like some black streaks, it's going to show up as I paint. So I want to make sure that I have everything blended and it has a smooth presentation. Pull that one off. Go to the next one. So I'm trying to get, again, a jump of values from black to dark gray, middle gray, all the way to white. Any questions so far? Okay. What do you guys think of mixing paint? So how's it going so far? Good. Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Okay, and then those who I don't see today, are you guys mixing paint too? I know some aren't. Saxton, are you doing mixing? I'll just do thumbs up or unmute your mic. Okay, Saxton, you are. Okay, Saul, are you painting too with us?
No, my space is way too small for that.
Okay, okay. Let me know if you have any questions, okay?
I'm following along.
Okay, okay, cool. Thank you, Saul. Raylan, how are you doing? Doing good. Okay, and you're painting with us too?
Yes, I am.
Okay, okay, cool. All right, Scarlett, how are you? Are you painting too? Okay, cool. Okay, thank you, Scarlett. Aubrey, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm not painting because I don't have my paint yet, but I'm just watching.
Okay, okay, got it. Okay, thank you, Aubrey. Rebecca, how are you doing?
Unfortunately, I can't paint at the moment because my paint is still coming in.
Okay, okay, cool. So you're following along then, you're watching.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you, good. Okay, and Ashley, I think you're painting, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm painting.
Okay. All right, awesome. Okay, you guys ready for the next one? Let's keep going. So even though I was gone for like a few minutes, everything's still wet, which is really good. I'm gonna add some more black. I'm getting kind of low. Get some more white. And I'm going to now continue to mix. If you are mixing with your brush, make sure that you are pushing both sides in, because if not, it can get streaky. So like, let me show you. Right here on the very top, there's a black patch of dark paint. So if I were to paint with this right now, you can't see it as easily, but there's going to be black streaks. And I don't want that to happen. So that's kind of a downfall if you are using your paintbrush as a mixing palette. We just have to be conscious that we have to have all the bristles mixed together well. If not, it will show up streaks when we actually paint on our swatches. Okay, so it's getting a little bit lighter. I'm going to keep going more. This is kind of an eyeball thing. You know, it's just more of you seeing the lights and darks and making sure you have a good gradient. Okay, so now I'm going to apply the paint onto my next swatch. I'm on swatch 3 now. Okay, and so we can tell that there's a strong step that's happening. This is getting really light. I have to think though that I have only 2 more colors, actually just one value before I get to white of the paper, white paint. So I'm gonna have a really, really light gray. Those of you who are doing 5 swatches, just watch out for that gradient. You don't wanna have it jump too much where then all of a sudden there's a white patch and then there's a lot of dark grays. And again, you can redo any of these once they're dry, just paint directly over them if you need to. All right, I'm gonna go right to the next one, remove my tape and put my tape over the next area. Going to add more white. This is gonna be my last white light value before I get to white of the paper. I'm going to move over to a new little swatch just because there's a lot of paint going on here. If you are painting too, say you like to paint at night, and so there's might be like a lot of warm light in the house or in the space you're in, or maybe cool lights, or maybe you're working from the window. It's interesting because sometimes the paint will look a little darker if we were in a different light versus outside or night or whatever. So that's something that happens. Okay, so I'm looking at this swatch. I'm saying it looks okay to me. I'm going to go ahead and paint the rest of it. I hold a brush similar to like drawing. So I have it held in the center. I'm pressed pretty hard with my fingers, so I have control over the tip of it. And then I hold it sometimes differently when I'm just making quick little swatches of colors or painting application. And we don't want to make it globby, meaning like impasto paint, kind of like this effect. We want to keep it smooth since we're working with just a smooth gradient. Okay, so now my brush is filled with paint. I want to clean that or even use a new brush if you guys have other brushes, because now we're going to go to the white. So again, I'm cleaning it off, pulling this one off. And now I'm just going to use white paint. I'm going to use the side that I didn't use yet. Now I know white is going to look very similar to white of the paper. And I know some of the question was asked last time, do we use white of the paper when we get to the white part of our art piece, or do we paint white? And I mentioned that it's up to you guys. Sometimes we make mistakes, so we have to cover it with white. So I would say if you're going to, since we're painting, just keep white, keep the white paint involved as well. Because again, that can cover up areas if we paint over a certain spot. Okay, so then there's the white. Clean my brush again. Pull off the tape. So here's my value scale. It's still drying, but once it is dry, like the black is dry, it's going to have a shininess to it, which I don't think the camera is picking that up, but it's really nice. It's a good kind of effect. It looks nice aesthetically. Okay, I'm just gonna bring this closer to show you guys. So here's the gradient. Then what I would do is, when I get to my actual drawing, I want to make sure that I add those values kind of similar to what we just seen here. Now we've seen the demonstration where a hole was actually punctured in the middle to kind of get that value. That's something if you want to do. If not, you can just use the edges to try to find that same value. Now know that I'm going to do this in a different sitting. So I'm not gonna probably have the same palette, and plus I painted over all of my palette anyhow. So I don't have those same colors, same values that I had before. Which is fine, you just wanna get something similar to it. So again, when you are mixing and you're basing it off of this color chart, value chart, I keep calling it color chart, value, you'll get something similar, maybe not exact, but at least we have these values in place for as we start our art piece. Okay. Oops. Any questions? Any questions, you guys? As we get towards the end of this, I just want to do a little demo on painting the actual object. So I'm just pulling up the photo here.
I have a question real quick.
Yes, yes.
So are you, when you're looking at our artwork, are you like comparing it to this scale specifically, the one that we submit with it, or?
Oh, will I compare it? No,
Yeah.
overall, it's going to be you comparing it, but you still submit both of them so we can see the overall values. But I won't be really picky to say like, oh, that should have been lighter. That was a 2 swatch. That was a 3 swatch.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so as long as you have your gradient overall, that's good. Again, it doesn't have to be exact.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. You guys, I have the art piece pulled up here. This is again from the still life. And I do have the different values that we've seen that I want to make sure I replicate. I want to let you guys know this too. And I was trying to tell everybody in our breakout sessions, these are really detailed because it has a textured wall. Please know that you don't need to get all these little tiny dots, or let's look at the wood on the floor, the ground plane. This is a lot of work. This can take hours to get every little tiny dot in detail. So you just want to get overall the shape. So in this outline that I was doing, I simplified it. So I literally just have an outline on the background. I don't have all my little dots that we've seen from the photograph. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint a little bit of this. Around there, okay. All right, so I have my swatches up. You guys can see in the big screen against the window, so I can see that. Then I have the artwork. You can start from dark to light if you want, light to dark, either way, in the middle. Just at the end of the day, we're just going to be painting, so we all want to get the same result. I'm going to use a pointed brush, and I'm actually going to wet this a little bit. And so when I wet this, I'm just going to barely put it in the tip, push it against the container, and then actually dab it a little bit too, because I don't want to have too much. Again, it's going to look like a watercolor. Then I'm going to start getting the black. You guys can see that okay. Okay, the black I didn't draft out, but I see it from the photo. So having this pointed brush really helps out because I can get little detail. And I want to show you guys, I'm simplifying this from the photo. Let me show you guys the photo. If the camera picks this up, okay. So here's the apple. And you guys see how it's very irregular, this black patch. It's like thin and thick, little dots. Because we're doing this in a simplified form and we're working with couple objects, I'm going to make this more simplistic. So I'm not, again, doing every little tiny shape. This can take us like 50 hours to do this exactly like what we see. So I'm simplifying it. So that's why this black is a little bit more thicker. I can actually add more to it. Okay, and then I would get my other black. So I see that there's black here on the base of this brush. This is a great brush. However, I'm just so connected to those flat brushes. So like here's a small flat brush I could use. I just like how it has a straight edge. It helps me get straight values or straight lines, not values. I'm gonna add some water into it. Okay, so there's the black. There's a couple black pieces in here to kind of show that chrome effect. I'm gonna get the next color, next value. I'm gonna clean my brush. And you can use a lot of brushes. I know I keep only using a few, but we'll use this one. It's a little bit bigger and it's called a round brush because it's rounded, has a point. Now I'm going to get the next gray. And I technically could mix a whole bunch of this, but because of the demo and I want you guys to work on your own pieces, I'm kind of doing this a little bit quicker. But I want to get something close to this value now because I just did my blacks. Now I'm going to do number 5. We talked about too actually labeling them. Where's the edge of the paper? So this would be like, this would be a 4 value. Here would be a 5. So again, literally putting numbers next to the work can help too. This would be 1, 2. Then you would just have to erase it. One more thing too, when you guys do get to white, if you still have thick outline from the graphite, the white actually will blend and show through because it's more translucent. And that becomes more like a flat, muddy look to it. Black and gray will cover graphite super easily, but not the white. So I recommend to erase very lightly, like a ghost image, when you get to your white areas. So then it's not going to show the thick outline from the graphite. Okay, I'm going to do one more as we just said our gray, and then we'll be done with our demo. Make that darker. Okay, so I'm adding now that next gray. This dark gray is in a lot of places in the apple. I added some water because I have to be really careful not to cover up too much of the black or cover the black. At the very end, if you feel you lost anything, you can just go back and add those little shapes back in. Okay, let me pull this up closer. Okay, so that's the start of it. Any questions? Make sense? I know this looks messy, but it'll be cleaned up as I keep going. You guys notice here, if you can see that, there's getting a little bit more lighter patches because it's watered down. I can just cover that really quickly with the medium, the paint over that again, because I don't like it to look too like translucent here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know how you started with black and then you like tried to go around it with the gray? Could we like put the gray down first and then put the black on top of it once it's dried?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can go any direction you want or start with middle grays, whites, or go back with black at the very end. Yeah.
And then if we have like on my picture that I did, there's like little specks of like white throughout it to like kind of highlight the fur on the giraffe. So do you think if I like keep the white paint really thick and go over on the top that it'll still show, or you think it'll be translucent still?
Okay, so if you add, so it has like a darker gray, right? And then you add the white on top of that.
Yeah.
I would say you probably have to do a couple white patches with it to get it so it won't be translucent.
Right.
And
Okay.
it depends on the paint too that we all have. Some of ours is thick, some of it's like kind of already thinner acrylic. So if it is like a thin acrylic, then for sure I would add a lot more, a couple layers of white. If it's thick already, then you might just need one.
Okay.
It's a good question.
And in this, you said we're staying away from like the like chunkiness. If in our painting, can we use that chunkiness to like kind of build like texture if we're doing the draft?
You can make sure it's not too chunky though, like impasto paint, like kind of Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah.
It just has a different look to it. We're trying to keep things like flat and posterized, like how the photos are. But I do see how the giraffe has those layers. So it kind of is nice to have those sense of texture to build the form. Yeah, just, I would say don't do too much, like
Okay.
where it's too thick.
All
It's a
right.
good
Thank you.
question. Yeah, you're welcome. What else, you guys? Other questions? Thumbs up if we're all okay. Okay. All right, cool. What do you guys think of your value scales? They look okay? Okay. And what you can do is once it dries, like it'll dry in a few minutes, sit with it if you need to, like meaning just like live with it for an hour or so or a couple days and just see, does it look okay? Maybe I can make something lighter. But the overall idea is it's training our eye to just see the different tones. So when we actually create the piece, we understand what tones we need to make that posterized image. Okay, cool. We're good. Yay. Yes. Okay, let's give everybody a round of applause for their work today. Yay. Guys, thank you. Okay, that's all I have for you. So I look forward to seeing them on Monday. Have a great weekend, you guys. Thank you, everybody. Bye, you guys. Happy weekend. Any other questions?
I have one just real quick.
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
So let's say because I was doing the robot. I was wondering if it like, let's say if it got too hard at some point, is it okay if I just switch off to like the apple and the bucket, because I have a good idea of how to do it. I might do both and see and like which one I like more. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Like if I switch to a different one if another one got too hard?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally
All right.
understand.
All right. I was
Yeah.
just making sure. All right.
Right. Yeah.
That's
You're
the- that's
welcome.
no problem. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thanks, Anthony. Saxton, Raylan, any questions? Raylan, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, no, not at all. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you.